Welcome to my cafe.
Thank you.
Early in the morning. So, some tea?
Yes.
For you?
Kenyan tea is the best in the world.
This is some beautiful tea from your place.
This is from Kericho.
Don't mention the brand because they haven't paid for it.
Yeah.
So they need to pay for us to actually make some mentioning also on air as well. Very well?
Very well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So I'll have my, of course, flask here.
Yeah.
I'll be serving you anytime you want me to. You can just call upon me to do that.
Okay, good.
So how was the week?
Even amidst the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? This is a breakfast show.
Okay.
And I can see Otende also is walking in as well. So yeah. I'll need also to serve him some tea. I know he's...
He has heard about tea and he quickly dashed in. Good morning.
Good to see you. Yeah. Right. So today we have a lot to discuss as far as politics is concerned, but also family on the agenda is the issue of corruption still.
Yeah.
We're waking up to more stories on corruption, and the latest is all about this particular dam. We also know what is happening with Galana Kulalo as well. So after 5 years down the line, nothing yet has yielded fruit from Galana Kulalo. So and a lot of other issues. Also some companies have been listed by the DCI, so we shall also look at that as well. But what is your opinion? Are we winning? Are we losing? Are we just maybe plateauing?
We appear to be, well, there's something worth celebrating, to be sincere, because I can, at least in all this, whatever that is happening,
yes,
you get the sense that even those people who engage in such corrupt practices will think at least thrice before doing it now, as opposed to maybe what they will do back in the day. Then secondly, something that we raised last week with Mheshimiwa Tiende about the people who enter into this contract, that now, unlike previously, given the fact that many of these things are coming to fore, we will also get to see the thinking of many of our officers that commit the country to some of these loans without proper due diligence and that kind of a thing. But there is a big room for improvement, to be sincere. I wouldn't wish that as a country we've just buy into, you know, for Kenyans, it's okay for them to celebrate and see that something appears to be happening. But for us at our level, at leadership, we know so many other things that are not being done, which it is our duty to speak about with the hope that DCI can get to move in that direction as well. Because all we are saying is that we want total war on corruption. Total war on corruption.
Yeah. But the question is, are we winning? Is it just the beginning?
It's a beginning. It's not very easy, but you know, we must always remember something that, and this is something that Mheshimiwa Tiende, as an officer of the court, has always reminded us here, that the final conviction will now be is a victory. What you are reading about is just the beginning of a phase. And unfortunately, and this is not to pour water on the work that you media do, but on many occasions, what we read on the newspapers and what is presented in the courts are two worlds apart, unfortunately. That's the truth. We've learned from NYS, we've learned from many other, you know, NYS, we read about 9 billion shillings. What has been presented in court today is only 400 million.
But it's still money.
It's still money.
Yeah,
even if it was a shilling, it belongs to taxpayers. You know, many of our hospitals don't have drugs that are worth even 100 shillings. So even if it is 10 cents and it belongs to the people of Kenya, it is worth going after.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll walk over now to Otiende and ask him what he will really care for this morning. Coffee, tea, yes, duvia, as they call it. What will you want this morning?
Good morning. Good to see you. In Rarieda.
Oh, well, there's a good change here. Now Debarl is serving us.
It's always been, I lost some track along the way, but I used to do this. Yeah?
I'd like some black coffee.
Some black coffee?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me just pour some, then you get your coffee momentarily. But looking at the headlines today, anything new that you can say truly this is something fresh, or the story is just depressing?
It's not really new, but what is now new in the last few days is the quantum of what we are talking about. We seem to have moved from hundreds of millions now to billions. And I think that's a real point of worry. And the second point that really worries is the amount of money that we seem to have readily committed to foreign companies who are not even legal entities in this country. So they are not persons you can even sue. You cannot take them on. They are faceless in the eyes of the law in this country. And the point that Senator Chirioto was making, which we made last week, is that the time has really come to do due diligence with any company that we are to engage with, so that there's a local address, there's a local contact person, there's a performance bond, and their legal personality is assured.
Thank you.
I think that's what needs to be focused
on. All right,
on.
thank you so much. And of course, that will be an engaging discussion much later in the course of the program. But I want to show what is fresh off the press this morning. Let me also take away my flask from the set. I'll be also pouring some tea for myself. But this is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Let me just try and remove this. Yes, you paid 21 billion shillings for empty thicket. That is what is a splash on the front page of the Daily Nation today. The nerve of it all, detectives summoned directors of 107 firms in dam scam probe. The AG told Kerio Valley Development Authority, don't dare. But they went ahead and took a foreign bank loan of 61 billion shillings and paid 21 billion shillings for a dam that has not been designed, and even the bush has not been cleared. Look at that. Now the banks are asking Kenya to start serving the loan. Taken for a thicket? This story continues on page 4 and 5 and 6 of the Daily Nation today. And also, here, the caption reads, behold Kenya's most expensive bush. This is it. According to the government, 38.5 billion shillings dam is coming up here. Treasury has already paid 21 billion shillings for it, but there is no movement on the ground to show where the money went. Enter the detectives. Then you have your ellipsis there. And you can follow the story, as I've mentioned, on page 4 and 5 and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Black Beauty and Brains at the Oscars. It has taken 35 years for a black woman to win an Oscar for a non-acting role, and Kenya's Lupita Nyong'o, who took the gong in 2014 for 12 years, a slave, is euphoric. You can follow this story on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. This is the star for you, and you're waking up to this particular splash. Fake Uhuru cons Mirali of 80 million shillings. Stranger than fiction. Audacious suspects mimic president as they con tycoon of millions. Police say suspects drive new cars, wear designer suits and stay in palatial homes. This story continues on page 2 of the Star this morning. Also still, full list, DCI George Kinoti summons big names in 63 billion shillings dams scandal. This story continues on page 6 of the Star this morning. Also in the dock, suspects Anthony Wafula. We have also Gilbert Kirunja, David Lukaya, and William Malala at Milimani Law Courts yesterday. And these are the suspects who fake Uhuru cons Mirali of 80 million shillings. You can follow that story, as I've mentioned, on page 2 of the Star. Witness tells how he found sister body in shower. This is Kila Onyancha's case. Billionaire blow, court freezes tycoon Kariuki's bank accounts. Amina backs down on D+ for P1 teachers training. And Mombasa MCA's plan to impeach 3 Joho executives. This story continues on page 25 of the Star this morning. I want to show you also what we have on the front page of the People Daily, how 6.3 billion shillings dams loot was wired to Europe and back. DCI has summoned 107 firms linked to 63 billion shillings stole projects, and it tries to trace cash as it tries to trace cash from Treasury. This story continues on page 6 of the People Daily this morning. And I will show you also the hard copy of the Standard momentarily, which also has the same story. 3 held over Iranian committee prison break plot. Court grants DPP request to detain suspects accused of working with top envoy to free sneak out of Kenya convicted terrorist. Uhuru imposters 6 mint millions. Uhuru imposters 6 mint millions in executive scam. Fake president has been calling victims to donate to the Big 4 projects. This story continues on page 2 of the People Daily this morning. And this is a standard for you. Somebody didn't send me the soft copy today, but we have a hard copy nonetheless. It says 107 companies listed in cabinet kickback probe. This is what is on the front page of the Standard today. Investigation. DCI boss George Kinoti vows to unravel multi-million billion shillings bribe taking claims by some CSs and names companies and directors that must meet his officers today to shed light on their dealings with Italian farm facing probe. This story is tucked away on page 6 of the Standard today. Also, Jogo House TAC agree on teachers' admission grade. This is all about the D+, education CS and teachers employer finally resolved to retain C+, that is for degree, and C- diploma as minimum entry to training colleges, locking out grade D holders. This story is tucked away on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Kiambu expands hospital bed capacity from 1,100 to 3,500. And that story also continues inside the Standard on page 8 today. Also, demo in Koiba take over police laxity and the Chang'an dance. That story on page 5 of the Standard this morning. Let's cross over. But before we do that, let's just see what the Business Daily has for us before we cross over to the region or across the borders. How Lugari MP and 1 billion shillings from state firms. I beg your pardon. Yeah, it says the Taxman Directorate or the Taxman and Directorate of Criminal Investigations track legislators' deals. Lugari MP, this is Ayub Savule, and a total of 1 billion shillings from contracts signed with various state agencies in 5 years through his company, Sunday Publishers Limited. The Kenya Revenue Authority has revealed in court filings. Mr. Savule's Sunday Publishers is said to have received the cash between 2013 and 2017 from government agencies, among them the National Hospital Insurance Fund, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, and the Nairobi County Government, Migori County, Mombasa County, and the National Lands Commission. The lucrative deals are now the subject of an ongoing tax evasion investigation by KRA and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. During the 5 years or the 5-year period, Sunday Publishers, which Mr. Savula co-owns with his wife, Helen Kemboi, filed nil returns. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, relief as price of unga falls below 90 shillings a packet is some good news there. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily, and you can see also a standalone picture there. This is M. Akiba Bond. We can see Nairobi Security Exchange Chief Executive Geoffrey Odundo and Central Depository and Settlement Corporation CEO Rose Mambo, Capital Markets Authority Director of Markets Operations. This is Wycliffe Shamaya and NSC Vice Chairman Bob Karina. During the reopening of the M. Akiba retail bond yesterday, this story is inside also the Business Daily. Kenyan bags 7.6 billion shillings Ethiopia geothermal deal, and you can read the rest of the story inside the Business Daily. We cross over now to Uganda, where we have the Daily Monitor awaiting for us. I'll try and lift that quickly for us so that we can see what is in there. This is happening in Uganda, and this is your splash today from Uganda. Magara murder suspects stabbed, beaten. This is according to reports. The 8 suspects were arrested after Susan Magara's body was found dumped in Kitiko village on the Entebbe Expressway on February the 27th, 2018, 3 weeks after she was kidnapped. And this story is tucked away on page 4 of the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda. Major General Kalyangoza speaks out on brawl, says they made a U-turn after occupants of 2 vehicles that were involved in an accident in Seeta created a chaotic scene. This story tucked away on page 6 of the Daily Monitor. And also we have a standalone picture here. What is life? And light at end of tunnel as rain returns. A girl can be seen here giving water to cattle in Amudat district last week. The return of rain as announced by Uganda National Meteorological Authority last weekend is a relief to farmers across the country whose animals and crops have been hit by the dry spell. That's and all you can find inside the Daily Monitor. Also, how church will spend 900 million shillings on Martyrs' Day. This is tucked away on page 5. NCDC introduced a digital syllabus and government to put ferry on Lake Bunyonyi. That is regional extra. A pull-out magazine inside the Daily Monitor in Uganda. In Tanzania, we have the Citizen BRT under review after challenges during phase 1. And it says a key suspect of the review is to see how the government can collaborate with the private sector in major commuter transport projects. This story continues on page 2 of The Citizen. And court rejects plea that Lisu bail be revoked. That also you can follow the gritty details on page 3, while first blockchain babies, Tanzanian, and that story is on page 2. While first blockchain babies, Tanzanian. Well, I need to just read a snippet of that for you to understand what it's all about. In an effort to improve access to healthcare, an Irish medical project made history by registering the world's first blockchain baby in Tanzania. New reports revealed the groundbreaking feat was attained last July, but has just come to light. Techies for the past few years have frothed over blockchain as the record-keeping technology for bitcoins and cryptocurrencies. So it's hard to even know what babies and blockchain could even have to do with each other. But you can find all the details here on page 2 of The Citizen in Tanzania. Still, we have the Swahili version, which is the Mwananchi in Tanzania. Ajali gari za serikali zaua watumishi 22 ni ndani ya miezi 9 baada ya wengine 8 kufariki Morogoro juzi. And you can follow this story on page 4 of the Mwananchi in Tanzania. This week, I need to show you what the East African is holding for you. Hidden players in Kenya, Somalia's spot is the splash. Nairobi is blaming external players with interests, it says, in oil, gas and fishing for the ongoing diplomatic row over the maritime border. And you have the full report on page 4 of the business, not the Business Daily, but the East African. Also, Dar open to new buyers for cashew. Shadowy Kenyan buyer Indo Power has yet to shell out the money it promised. This story is tucked away on page 13 of the East African this week. Rules for priests who father children. The Vatican has them, but won't say what they are. And this story continues on page 21. Small miners out of the hole. Big boys in artisans won't pay withholding tax and VAT. And this story continues on page 31. Cross-listing going out of fashion. Low trading volumes and lack of harmonized procedures cited. This is in the business segment, page 45 of the East African this week. And in the magazine, we have Hamas cajoled. A death mystery. You remember him, who was the UN General Secretary, and you have the cover story there on the front page of the magazine, which is a pull-out magazine inside the East African this week. Editorial Cartoons, I'll be remiss if I don't show you what we have today. This is what God has drawn for us, and it's all about the Huduma number, which is demystified. Hashtag Huduma number. The card comes with a Eurobond app, which has SGR speed. It is connected to the IBC biometric servers, and it will be fitted with an NYS IFMIS microchip, right? This is what Garo has actually drawn for us today. This is the names, remember, the Huduma number. So the controversy shouting around that particular. And this is also what Victor has drawn for us today. Corruption in cabinet. While President Uhuru Kenyatta is trying to put out the fire, corruption elsewhere, in-house, the cabinet, most of the cabinet secretaries have been embroiled in corruption as well, and this is what he's done for us. This is Victor from the staff. Let's see also what we have inside the... This is the Daily Nation. Sebo will run for presidency in 2021. Remember, NRM has actually endorsed him. So Sebo says he will run for 2021. And of course, this is all about extending the terms of presidents here in Africa. So Sebo, the way to go. All right. And who else? I think that's it. That from all our cartoonists, what will we do without our daily tonic of cartoons to just spice our lives as well? Right. So let's see what we have for you this morning. And we shall be discussing with the panelists who are already here much later in the course of a program, which is a splash here. You pay 21 billion shillings for empty thicket. The nerve of it all. Detectives summoned directors of 107 farms in dam scam probe. The AG told Kerio Valley Development Authority, don't dare. But they went full steam ahead and took a foreign bank loan of 61 billion shillings and paid 21 billion shillings for a dam that has not been designed. And even the bush has not been cleared. Now, the banks are in Kenya to start serving the loan taken for a thicket. The story is on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation. But a suspect accused of financing the Dusit complex attack that left 21 people dead will remain in custody for 10 more days until he is presented in court again on the 7th of March. Sadiq Aden Mumin is accused of aiding and abetting the Dusit terrorist attack by financially facilitating the terrorist. Authorities believe he is linked to suspects living in South Africa who allegedly sent him money. Mumin allegedly registered more than 52 phone lines through which he received money from South Africa. The prosecution says he withdrew through his 2 till numbers and used it to fund the attack. The prosecution has asked for time to conduct investigations which they believe extend beyond the borders to Somalia and South Africa. The Diamond Trust Bank is on the spot after Director of Public Prosecutions Nurdin Haji accused the financial institution of aiding and abetting terrorism. Haji told Parliament's Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that the bank failed to flag curious financial transactions that could have been used to finance the Riverside attack.
Within a week, somebody is withdrawing 30 million. And within 2 minutes, you see somebody withdrawing 5 million from M-Pesa. This money was going to Jilib, which is the headquarters of Al-Shabaab, not just anywhere in Somalia. Just to clarify, so that people don't think we are penalizing this particular bank. We are not. Diamond Trust Bank. We have cited them for several breaches of their obligations to report, from NYS cases to other organized crime cases, especially cybercrime. And they have become, I'm sorry to say this because you've asked, but in my opinion, they have become notorious in flouting those rules. And we've asked even for CCTV footages, which the bank has been reluctant to give us. And we are therefore concluding that there must be some form of aiding and abetting. What else would we charge them for?
And not come up and say.
Besides, Samburu Governor Moses Leonard Kaisan, I should say, recorded a statement with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as investigations into the theft of 2 billion shillings of county funds continue. The governor has denied any wrongdoing. That is, the senator should say, the governor, yeah. And here's a story that continues. And he's accused, alongside other senior officers and contractors from Samburu County, of embezzling public funds. The Iranian embassy has admitted reserving flight tickets for 2 Iranian nationals who have been in custody on suspicion of aiding or abetting terrorism, but denies attempting to sneak them out of prison. Iranian ambassador to Kenya, Hadi Farajavardad, says he was approached by 2 men who purportedly worked for the Ministry of Interior and who demanded money to help secure their release. 3 suspects who allegedly defrauded the Iranian ambassador were paraded in court. The prosecution wants them detained for 20 more days to allow for further investigations.
The story is like that. We have 2 pigeons in one cage, and the embassy is going to open the door for cage and say the pigeon, okay, fly back to your nation or country. These 2 people are kept heavily by Kenyan police, and we have no reason to escape them because the High Court has already set them free. I immediately contacted, through my secretary, the personal assistance to the Interior Minister, and I reported the case to the Interior Minister. Reserving the ticket doesn't mean that we want to escape them. Even previously, when the High Court set them free, we immediately booked the ticket. The Court of Appeal? Yeah, the Court of Appeal and High Court. We immediately booked the ticket because we understood that since the High Court or Court of Appeal set them free, they will be escorted to the airport to go back.
Now, the Director of Criminal Investigations will be forced to seek new avenues of sourcing for 4 members of Parliament accused of defaming their colleague, Wajir Women Representative Fatuma Gedi, after they failed to honor a summons to appear at the DCI headquarters. This loophole stems from an advisory from Parliament through an internal memo indicating that the matter does not touch on parliamentary work and thus could not be pursued further.
Mimi sina habari, sijaona barua kutoka bunge, sijaona barua kutoka DCI, mimi sina habari, sijaitwa na serikali. Wako na simu yangu, wanajua mahali mimi naishi, wanajua mahali mimi nafanya kazi. Mimi nimesikia kwa mtandao, kwa KTN, kwa NTV. Sasa nafikiri utaniambia mwenyewe ulitoa wapi story, sijasikia mbali.
The Senate has raised concern about the sluggish pace of implementing their recommendations that would right the wrongs that led to the tragedy at the Solai farm, where about 48 people lost their lives. The Justice and Legal Affairs, National Cohesion and Equality Opportunity and National Security Committees were on a truth-finding mission at the Solai farm, where they interacted with the residents and expressed displeasure over the inaction on their reports concerning the Solai Dam disaster.
Farm in Nakuru County made headlines last year after the walls of a dam collapsed, sending a cascade of devastation downstream. 48 people lost their lives and hundreds more lost their homes. Those scarred by the incident are still picking up the pieces of their shattered lives.
Hii nyumba moja is 850,000 Kenya shillings. If nothing else, from a mud house to a brick house, complete. Now, it's not to say we're compensating by the one they've lost. No, that's not, I'm saying that. What I'm saying is, let us also be rational in our argument and in our demand and in our justification for everything.
Why are we treating Mr. Patel as if he's a superior Kenyan? If Kenya Pipeline Aparastato can comply with an order of NEMA, why should Patel negotiate? Because what you're doing now, Abbas, is negotiating. You don't negotiate the law. Even on humanitarian grounds, Bwana Abbas. And what would be so difficult about giving these people food until the day they are paid?
3 Senate committees, the Justice and Legal Affairs, National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity, and National Security were however concerned that little had been done to right the wrongs that led to the tragedy, and that the recommendations that were approved and passed by Senate had not seen the light of day.
Tukio kama hii ingefanyika kwa wale mabonyenye, ingefanyika huko hapa Milimani, Nakuru, ingefanyika Karen, Nairobi, hii mambo ingekuwa imeisha zamani sana. Tunataka taifa ambapo pia Mkenya wa kawaida. Let us value the lives of the normal Kenyan.
In the report, the Select Committee, which was chaired by Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo, attributed the collapse of the dam to deliberate criminal acts and omissions on the part of the owner, Mansoor Patel, who is already facing criminal charges in Naivasha court.
Kwanza afanye what is right. Do what is right. Kwa sababu nasema huyu ni mtu ako okay, ako able. Mbona haufuati sheria? Sasa nawaambia tu watu wa Solai, mjue kama Senate hatutawacha hii maneno. Kuna shida moja Kenya ya Wakenya. Wakenya tunapenda kusahau and to move on.
The report recommended that Patel decommissions the dams, restores the environment, and compensates all those affected by the tragedy.
Red Cross.
The report also called on the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to fast-track investigations towards prosecuting the Nakuru County Commissioner, his deputy, and the chief in Solai for abuse of office and obstruction of justice after it established that they forced victims to sign indemnity forms in exchange for cash payouts. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
Now, trust is integral to any relationship, and the trust between the National Irrigation Board and the Israeli farm contractor to bring to life the Delonghi Kilala food project, Green Arava, is broken. But as the NIB seeks to untangle itself from the contract it entered into with Green Arava, the question then becomes, can Kenyan taxpayer trust that it has gotten value for the 5.9 billion shillings already spent on the project? And can they trust that it will be completed to fruition? That's a probing question. On NTV this morning, Olive Barrows seeks to establish just that question.
1 year, 11 months and 24 days. Basically 2 years. That is how far behind schedule the completion of the 10,000-acre Galana Kulalu model farm is. And now, the National Irrigation Board is begging your indulgence for another year at least, as it seeks to extract itself from the dysfunctional relationship it blames for the inordinate delay.
Once we get a contractor on site, within a maximum of 1 year, we should have completed all the pending works.
You're still optimistic?
Let me say that there's nothing really hard, such that we feel that in the exit of an Israeli, somebody else cannot do this.
But if matters are so simple, why has the Galana Kulalu food project gone so far off track? The NIB points to the Israeli contractor Green Arava, which they accuse of lacking transparency in its dealings, unable to support its demand for a 1.2 billion shilling advance payment to complete the works on the 10,000-acre model farm.
Now the contractor says he cannot pre-finance the government of Kenya. That's normally that is a stake. Unless we pay for this as they are, then he cannot do what? He cannot purchase the same. So when you look at the Financial Management Act, when should you pay and our services for NIB for us to pay, then we look and we see we are vulnerable. So what we are settling the contractor is this, and what we have been settling is this. Let him support certificate number 11. Let him break down the lump sum items and support the certificate in terms of bill of landing for goods which have already been purchased so that we can pay.
NIB's management blowing the whistle on their own project, keen to avoid the notorious Kamata Fridays as a result of abetting and illegality. If indeed this is the correct position, it raises the question why the Israelis, who've previously shipped in equipment for the project, would seek to veer so drastically off the course of their previous dealings with the NIB.
The contractor today, he has not surrendered all the monies and paid in advance. There is a fear that probably this contractor, the liquidity level, or in terms of his liquidity, there's a problem.
This demand being the straw that broke the camel's back, as NIB tells it, accusing Green Arava of inflating the cost estimations by up to 3,700% and being dishonest about the true state of progress on the Galana Kulalu model farm. All of which has led to operations on the farm stalling for approximately a year. And if indeed Green Arava is the villain in this story, what does it all mean for the Kenyan taxpayer?
We owe him about 8 million Kenya shillings.
80 or 8?
8 million Kenya shillings. Now, there is what we call performance security or performance bond in this contract of 96 million Kenya shillings. And the moment we disengage, we'll be recording this money immediately.
But it may not be quite as simple as that.
We have already now written to the HG, because you see that this contract loan agreement, it has several clauses. So we are just trying to be careful whether, in case of disengagement, what happens to the balance of the loan? Will it be available such that we can finance another contractor? Or now what really happens?
But the NIB concedes delays in payment have contributed to the delay in the full realization of the project, as have extreme weather events, as Green Arava contends. Still, they insist accommodations were made, and having failed to deliver, they say, it's time for Green Arava to pack up and go. Olive Barrows, NTV.
And all this is just in light of what we always talk about. Could we ever fight and also lance this boil of corruption in the country? That's the probing question. And we just want to also ask ourselves, so many things have been happening. We want to put them in perspective. Yesterday also we had a very intense discussion around KAA and the takeover by KQ, where Parliament has made the right decision to stop the takeover of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport by the loss-making Kenya Airways. And the whole deal is shrouded in mystery, as we said yesterday, and sounds suspect. Recent revelations also have just confirmed our fears. The deal is being fronted and pushed by individuals or groups outside the orbit of the airport's authority. raising questions about their motive. This week, or that is last week I should say, Kenya Airports Authority Managing Director Johnny Anderson categorically told Parliament's Public Investment Committee that the organization was never involved in the transaction. Neither did it originate the idea, nor was it ever consulted. Rather, the authority was railroaded into the transaction, to be sure. Mr. Anderson stated the authority was instructed by Principal Secretaries Paul Maringa and Esther Koimet to enter into the discussion with Kenya Airways with the writer that the decision had been made by higher authorities. Who is this higher authority? That is the attendant question. Neither was KAA team given any written communication from the cabinet to validate, I should say, the directive. This is a stinker. First, KAA is a public entity with an independent body. If a decision is to be made on its ownership and operation, there must be a proper process that involves even parliamentary approval. Asking KAA to hand over management of the airport to another entity, in this case Kenya Airways, is a major decision that cannot be made casually. Airports are strategic assets and must be jealously guarded. Thus, the cabinet cannot purportedly issue directive on the takeover without following the correct procedure. Secondly, even if perchance the decision was to be made, Kenya Airways does not have the capacity and resources to manage airports. Kenya Airways has perennially been making losses. It went into a misguided expansion plan that saw it procure aircraft it did not need and entered into routes that did not make economic sense. The fuel pricing model it adopted, as well as ticket costing, were poorly crafted, and the result has been high operational cost and reduced passenger uptake. Simply put, it is a struggling entity and hence cannot be trusted with an entirely new business to manage. Today we take a look on this and a raft of other issues as well. And if you're joining us this morning also, this is what you will be paid or you paid for. You've been paying for a ticket, 21 billion shillings for empty tickets. There you go. The AG told Kerio Valley Development Authority, don't dare, but they went ahead and took a foreign bank loan of 61 billion shillings and they paid 21 billion shillings for a dam that has not been designed and even the bush has not been cleared. Now the bank or the banks are asking Kenyans to start serving the loan taken for a ticket. The story continues on page 4, 5 and 6 of the Daily Nation. We want to go quickly into the discussion with our panelists who are already here to just discuss Galana Kulalu and a raft of other issues as well, with that ticket and many other issues also. Also, if you pick up the Standard today, 107 companies listed in cabinet kickback probe is another story that you also need to know. DCI boss George Kinoti vows to unravel multi-billion shilling bribe-taking claims by some CSs and names companies and directors that must meet officers today to shed light on the dealings with Italian firm facing probe. This is on page 6 of the Daily Nation, where it continues. Right, our panelists are already here in studio. Otende Amolo is with us, and he's a member of Parliament from Marietta. We have also Jacob Dio. Good to see you, sir. Right, you've recovered. You're on the mend, I think, the last 2 weeks.
I'm okay.
You okay? Good to see you. Yeah. Welcome back. He's a former member of Parliament from Game also. We introduced earlier Senator Aaron Cheriot from Kericho, and Boni Kalola is joining us this morning, who is the Deputy Leader of Ford Kenya, and also Kimani Mwatangi, who is a Senator from Kiambu. Gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Let's just begin with the Galana Kulalu project. We've heard that very comprehensive story there from Olive Barrows looking at the line. And I remember, is it 3 years back, we discussed Galana Kulalu here with Jacob Dio, Senator Kimani Matangi, Mithika Linturi as well, also Professor Herman Manyura. And we were asking ourselves, is this a scandal in the waiting? And I remember you, Jacob Dio, asking a very probing question. Why was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here in the country and he never even attempted to go and see what is happening down there at Galana Kulalu?
Yes, I did. In fact, he had a mysterious meeting in the State House, then flew back to Israel. But I also asked Debarl that where were our priorities? At that time, there was no fertilizer, and there were no authentic seedlings in the North Rift. Why were we then? They told us we would invest 7 billion shillings, and they kept telling us of various figures until the last time I heard about it, it was 35 billion shillings. And the thing has never produced anything, which tells me that National Irrigation Board was culpable or is culpable in this scam. It is just a scam. There's no difference with it from the one you read on news of, or the one which is in the on the front page of the Nation,
yes,
where the taxpayer paid 25 billion shillings for a ticket. It was meant to siphon money, and I would not be surprised if Benjamin Netanyahu did not, being the Prime Minister of Israel, had no idea when he was here that the name of the country of Israel was being used to steal from Kenyans. Yeah.
Right. Let's hear from Senator Aaron Chiriot.
Well, I really wonder if there's anything more to add to this story other than what we have already said about it, that there's more than meets the eye. It's really unfortunate that it ends down to this, because it had been built up as Kenya's most ambitious irrigation project, and was supposed to turn around things. Because I listened to presentations from cabinet secretaries, PSAs, and people who previously spoken with so much conviction about what we are going to achieve out of all this. The question that doesn't come out clear to me is where did we get it wrong, apart from the fact that, okay, we've heard about that money was not properly used, but even leave that aside. You know, I'd rather we had achieved some results out of it, such that now we would be just discussing, says, okay, here are the results. It's only that the only problem we have with it is that it costed a penny too much than what was expected. But the sad truth is that there is absolutely very little to write home about. I've listened keenly to the explanation by, I think, the project manager. And there's a big argument about the contracts and the kind of contract that we entered into, which is something we had alluded to earlier. And I think we had discussions about the same last week. It appears that the contractor is more keen on pushing the state to actually terminate so that they can get out of it. But the project manager is wondering, for what we have already paid, if we terminate, surely will we be able to get somebody to come on board and execute the remainder of the contract at the value that is still remaining, which calls to question the same thing that we had mentioned earlier on Debarl, the people who draw these contracts between us as a country and some of these private entities. It is clear that these contracts are completely lopsided in favor of the foreigners, as opposed to protecting taxpayers' money. And I think in all this discussion about this Galana Kulalu and the ones for the dam that you're about to discuss,
yes,
it's about time that perhaps you call the state law office, either send you people to go and listen to their side of the story, because I know before Treasury commits pen to paper, there's preliminary approval from state law office to say this contract is sound, please go ahead and sign it. Why are they giving a nod of approval to such contracts? That will be my question, because in the long run, it appears every time there's a dispute, it is Kenya's, you can imagine 47 million Kenyans are negotiating from a point of weakness about their money with a foreign entity. I thought it should have been every time that there's a dispute, it should be the contractors pleading and saying, my rights are being trampled upon. But it appears in all these cases, Kenya as a state has an extremely weak hand as opposed to the contractors. All they are doing is, once they get this mobilization fee, they scratch surface and disappear. So that you try to chase them around the world after a few, while they introduce they throw in a few clauses that, oh, after all, even this contract says the following, please go ahead and cancel me. If you cancel them, what you have paid them is more than the work that they've done. And the remainder of the money is not sufficient to execute the remainder of the contract. Therefore, it calls to question about the people who do who check on the wording of a contract. who are these people and what is their motivation to enter the country into contacts that eventually the country ends up losing.
All right, let's hear from Motende or Mono.
I think Galana Kulalo is a classic case of creating a problem in order to solve it. Because we should not have created that problem in the first place. There are a lot of fundamental questions that it raises, and the first one is the issue of sovereignty of the people. This is one of those many projects where we only read about it, that the government has made the decision to invest so many billions, and there was no consultative process. And that is why, even when it fails, there are only issues and questions that are pending. No one seems to have the answer. Why was it conceived in the first place? Who conceived it? Why was that Israeli company, if it was indeed, contracted? What exactly was it supposed to achieve? Secondly, it also demonstrates this very sad idea of coming up with fantastic projects and fantastic ideas, many of which, because they are not consultative, end up being impractical. Why would we want to enter that level of magnitude of expenditure in order to produce maize when in the Rift Valley there are many farmers with hundreds and thousands of sacks of maize who are stuck and cannot sell? What exactly are we trying to achieve? Why not facilitate those who already have and get that maize than spend billions and billions on some fantastic idea of irrigating some semi-desert in order to feed the entire country? And we know that where maize is basically produced, where if the farmers are paid, and we forget about those who are conning, the farmers, if farmers are paid, we would not need all those kinds of things. Why don't we invest what is right where it is right, rather than just come up with these ideas? I think Kulalu Galana or Galana Kulalu is just one of those other mega projects that we are seeing, which was merely a conduit for siphoning money.
Right. And Boni Halwale, we may remember, I think the Agricultural Committee had actually raised question about Galana Kulalu then. And I think they were airlifted to, I can remember, to Mombasa, and the story changed completely. And they came here and they kept mum. If you may remember, the Agriculture Committee in the previous Parliament, they had raised question about Galana Kulalu. But it seems they were airlifted to Mombasa. Money was exchanged somehow, and the story changed completely. I know Jaco can remember that. I don't know if Senator Boni Halwale can remember also the story around Galana Kulalu. And now we are here. It's a damn squib.
We were on this panel when we were raising those questions, and I remember one, Senator Wamatangi and former Senator Mutahi Kagwe. They came out with their guns, both barrels blazing at the hips. When Jacoy and I,
if they have any,
yeah, when Jacoy and I were asking, what is this thing? Kulalu Kulana. And I recall
Get the name right. Galana Kulalu.
No, I'm saying it deliberately because
they were struggling with the name then. Yeah, everyone was struggling.
I remember Professor Manyora reminding us that what that means in Luya. Kulalu. Not just a mad person, but a huge monster which is mad. So maybe we should leave it to Wamatangi to explain to us. Now that he has the benefit of hindsight, what does he have to say? But before he comes in, I think it's all lost. It's a question now of not looking around, but we go for the big answers from the most responsible people. We would like to hear the government spokesman tell the country what has become of the money that was invested in this project. Two, there is a PS in charge of agriculture, CS in charge of agriculture, then the line people who are involved in implementation of the project. I don't know what has happened now. During the Moi time, when some of us were up in arms against him as university students. The money that used to get lost those days used to be in tens of thousands of shillings. But today, it is 21 billion shillings for an empty ticket, another 15 billion for Kulalu Kulana, and billions and billions and billions. It looks like loss of public funds has become a way of life. And there is nobody raising the hard questions. Unfortunately, the oversight role of Parliament has collapsed because the opposition has become more government than the government. In fact, when you listen to Mbadi and Tienda Molo and Junet speak in Parliament, you cannot wish to watch parliamentary proceedings any more time. So the accountability questions are begging, and unfortunately, we are where we are. Over to Amatang.
Bonnie is setting you up.
Yes, absolutely, and you know, it's because he didn't have much material for that particular subject. But you know, Debarl, it's a reality that yes, indeed we sat here, we debated this at length, and when we did so, we did that with the information that we had at hand, and for that matter, I think then where we are now raises the same fundamental questions, and I think one of the panelists said that earlier. You know, in the course or between when we have made a decision, because in the first place, if you ask somebody or any person in this country, should we think about food security in this country, the answer is yes. Should we look for mitigating arrangements that in the event that there's a mismatch between the balance of what we consume and what we produce, that we should be able to mitigate that? The answer is yes. The question is how, and if the how then turns into that we have to be innovative in the first place to irrigate a part of this country and grow more food, then the question then boils down to then how do we do it? And I believe the main questions here will lie in these two areas, Debarl. First, when this project was mooted, decided upon, and then commissioned, which people were put behind it? Are they people with expertise to be able to manage or run such a project to its fruition? Secondly, is this Israeli company the only one company that would have been trusted to run such a project when such enormous amounts of money have been put in? And then this again goes down to the same question we're asking. Have we or are we creating projects, signing contracts which are tailor-made to fit probably either the instructions or the specifications of one either contractor or provider, such that then that provider ends up holding us at ransom to the extent that if they fail to perform or to continue, then we can't work anymore. And I believe that that's completely wrong. Two, would be asking, because it is public funds that were invested and have been invested, the most appropriate thing, and Debarl, it is the law of human nature, that you could start 100 projects, but you do not expect, or you might not expect 100% success in all of them. But if you're using public funds, then it is prudent, it is important that you also make or give full disclosure as to what are the reasons specifically that have made this project fail. Has there been corruption in it? Have people benefited? Is it technical? Or, the failure? Those facts. Just the simple explanation of saying that the contractor has demobilized since last year in 2018 and is no longer willing. The contractor is saying that we've not been paid. That is not reason sufficient to satisfy the curiosity of members of the public as to how and why. Because if those are the only two reasons why a project of such magnitude, 5.9 billion, would be failing, then it's not believable. One would want to say, what are the real reasons that are making this then fail. And finally, then if it is owing to any person or people bringing us to such a situation, then are they going to be held culpable? But from the onset, sitting down to plan, to think as government or even as leadership as to how you would mitigate certain scenarios, including balanced and adequate food security, is not wrong in its own content. It is then how you have run it. And I believe that this company, Green Arava, should also know that the monies that they have been paid in the past, although they might be saying now that they've not been paid, that money that were paid in the past is public money. It's taxpayers' money. And so they're also held responsible and culpable by our law, that they can't just take money, pocket it, and go away with no explanation. I believe we should, as a government, as a country, ensure that people are brought entirely to the table to answer those questions. And I think that's the only way we would be saying that the people will be satisfied.
Right, thank you. Well, we want to take a short break. Sorry, Jacob, very briefly, we got a minute to go.
Get away with that. Wamatangi is a senator paid by public funds. He cannot say, I believe, I believe. What are they doing as the Senate to that county? A project of that magnitude should be a subject of discussion in Parliament. What are they doing? Debarl, you rightly say that Bonnie Halwele and myself, we raised the issue of corruption. In fact, after that show, a member of Parliament confessed to me the dealings they had in Mombasa. They never even got out there. They were in hotels and came back with a report.
They never went to the project.
They never went to the project. That particular member of Parliament is today a senator, where Wamatangi and Cheriot sit. You cannot come on public television and lament, we should be doing this. Were they tailor-made? I mean, what are you doing on taxpayers' money? They should go there and say, enough is enough.
So the dealings in Mombasa was actually to gloss over the issues that were raised about Galana Kulalo.
Yes.
Which now it's emerging that, yes, this is a dumb squib, it's not yielding any fruit. How many years after it was actually commissioned?
Not to make excuse, but you should also not allow Jacoy to run away with his argument. I mean, he was also this project began in 2013. And what did he do about it in Parliament?
We questioned it. That is why we are walking your memory back to history.
Then your questioning did not amount to anything. If this report is anything to go by.
Because
all I'm saying is, your point is valid, that Parliament needs to do better than what we are hearing about it. But I don't think you are the right person to make that argument.
No.
Maybe somebody who has never been to
Parliament.
Parliament.
No, I already made it.
Not you.
I already made it here, right here, at this particular hour, on this particular hour, in so many years ago. That time, when the report came to Parliament, we were being told by your people that there was tyranny of numbers. You couldn't do much. And the tyranny, one of the biggest problems in this country, Debarl, is Jubilee killing Parliament. And now that, then because they want to transfer power to executive, we want to know who in the executive cobbled up this project. Because this is an executive theft project. Somebody must explain to Kenyans how a whole prime minister of Israel can come to Kenya, sit for hours in State House, and fly back. What did he come here to do? That is a public house. State House is not a lodging, which is private.
There was a tight schedule around it.
Yeah, we want to know what were they doing? What was Netanyahu doing in State House? I mean, that's unusual. I have never seen anything quite like it. And now the taxpayer is left to pay somebody who only came to aid theft of public funds.
Debarl, at that time, Jacoy
just a moment. Let's take a short break.
National Assembly. And this matter was being prosecuted in the National Assembly. So really, and all those members of Parliament you said went to Mombasa, came back, and don't forget that Jacoy was not just an ordinary member of Parliament. He had a position. To whip.
He was in leadership.
He was in leadership. And so he
this.
cannot come here and start lamenting and singing
Jacoy,
songs of Jacoy.
Oh, okay. Please,
tell us.
allow us to take a short break. Please, let's take a station break. We'll be back with more on the other side of a break, looking at what is happening with Galana Kulalu. Is it a dam squib? That's a question that we're asking this morning. It's not yielded any fruit so far, and it's gobbled up billions of shillings so far. So don't go away, much more coming up on the other side of a break. You can see also the rush of tweets coming through. We shall be reading and sampling some of them in the course of the program.
which has cameras that penetrate through everything.
Welcome back. You're watching People and Politics here on AM Live, and we continue with the conversation on the war on corruption, looking at Galana Kulalu so far. Is it a damn squib? And we are actually listening from our panelists. We left Romatangi. Now we pick up on Dr. Debarl.
Yes, I think that there's something that needs correction. My friend Boni Halwale, and as you know, in recent times, today is done very well. He has not mentioned Raila. But usually it starts with Raila.
It's still early in the day.
Then comes to Amolo. So he has succeeded in coming to Amolo and mentioning me alongside John Mbadi, Mohammed Junet, all of whom are leaders in parliament. I have no such privilege yet. But what is important is that we must put matters in perspective.
Raila.
Hold on. I know you get excited, but it's my turn. Halwale has this habit of everything that is raised now, blaming it on parliament and failure of oversight of parliament, and running away from it all. Halwale was in parliament for 15 years, the last of which he was in Senate. And he now says parliament has failed, and since the opposition has joined government, there's failure of parliamentary oversight, and he talks as if we are government. And in truth, Halwale is more government than we are, because he's the chief court jester, and chief crier of the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. He's closer to that seat than Otiende Amolo as a member of parliament. And so if there's anything to blame the government for, Halwale should be telling us, not telling us parliament has failed in its oversight. I will tell you what we are doing in parliament right now. But the three things that should be clear: one is all these scams that we are seeing begin at budget. All of them. Galana Kulalu, for it to be whatever is calling Kulana, Galalu, or whatever, it was budgeted for and passed. He was in parliament at the time.
And Jakoyo too.
And my brother Jakoyo.
Yeah.
And Senator Matani. The issue of the budgeting and the scams at budget then must fall squarely there. Secondly, you must remember that agriculture is a devolved function. The primary entity that should deal with agriculture as a devolved function and money is under this is the Senate. Because under Article 96(1), the primary and the most primary role of the Senate is to protect the interests of the county government. And all this money come in the context of agriculture and in that particular county government. So Dr. Boni Halwale, Senator Wamatangi would be telling us that being in the last Senate, what did they do about this? But I think what is important is this. What is important, and that's what we're doing now, is we should start looking at these isolated matters, 21 billion here, 11 billion there, 31 billion there. We should have a forest view of all this and ask ourselves, as we asked ourselves last week on NPAC, all these contracts that the government keeps entering into with shadowy foreign companies, which are very powerful and very present at the time of negotiation. But once they are paid and something goes wrong, then you cannot find their address of service, you cannot find a contact person, you cannot find anyone to hold accountable. In fact, it gets worse. It gets to a situation where, as was admitted to us just last week, a company as serious as what was called Otimofo, now it's called IDEMA, has entered into contracts worth billions to run our elections in 2 circles, and even right now are running some contracts for government, but they've never been registered in this country as a legal entity. By their own admission, they are now pursuing registration. And you will find that most of these companies are not even registered. So number one, you can't even pursue them, because for you to pursue somebody, it needs to be a natural person or a legal person. If you go to court, you can't take an association of village chicken sellers to court unless they're registered. So we need to re-examine the regime in terms of we should not do business with any person who's not legally registered in this country. Secondly, we must review all these contracts. You can see there were attempts, like now with the story we'll come to of the dams, where the AG was saying, do due diligence and all. But the due diligence is being done 16 months after, and that's the case with most of these others. And lastly, the excitement of running to foreign companies to give them contract it's the greatest conduit to corruption, because most of those companies are not even companies where they are laid to be. They are just run by shadowy figures from this country who then claim that that's a foreign company and then, you know, give them contracts, and that money just comes back and circulates. And a lot of it, I'm afraid, is what goes into financing the elections in this country. I think that's what we need to examine.
Otiende, I've learned a new trick. Just a quick one. I've learned a new trick with Otiende. You heard he spoke for almost 30 minutes. But now I know, if you want to speak long, keep on saying secondly.
Now you're getting...
And then once you've done with everyone, he says now lastly. Because I was listening to him, he says secondly 4 times. But anyway, the point I wanted to make was, now that we have you in the National Assembly, Otiende, now that you're in the National Assembly, and you have challenged us as senators, it's good now that we have sober people like you in the National Assembly. In the last National Assembly, where Jacoyo Mediwo was, and I'm not saying that he was not sober. It's only that if you're in the midst of so many drunks, sometimes you can get high also. But let me tell you, we could not even debate a single thing, because every time when an issue like that one came up, the first thing they did was to oppose that Senate has no business discussing anything that has been touched through the budget, anything to do with the money issue, and nothing about any project that is national. That was the issue. So when it comes to the Senate, you would find that there's a riot in the National Assembly then, that Senate is taking away their business. And that's why you find sometimes some of those key issues that would have been interrogated, because I agree with you to the extent that, for example, agriculture is a devolved function. There should have been a lot of debate on this in the Senate. But however, let's also be conscious and clear that when national government retains almost 3/4 of the amounts that have been budgeted, that those amounts also cannot be specifically only used for functions which have been only left to national government. National government must also play a part in functions, even if they are devolved, under the Constitution, in the umbrella of cooperation and coordination with the counter governments. So otherwise, a project like that one, once it has been mooted, should have been able to go through the entire scrutiny of the entire of Parliament, so that we're able to determine that this is a healthy project. But like I said earlier, as I finalize, and I'm not saying secondly, like...
This is usually lastly.
You know, these people,
this is lastly.
These people,
but lastly, Debarl, as I said, we must learn to take the blame where it belongs. Because coming up with a project, deciding that it is good to work on something that is important to Kenyans is not wrong. But once we assign people to that role of managing such a project, and then they fail it for many reasons, including maybe possible corruption, and then we don't hold them to account, and we blame entirely the system or everyone involved or the concept itself, then you let people escape with the responsibility.
Thank you, Matanga.
I think we should learn something from Galana Kulalo, and that is that when the national government attempts to implement projects which, by the prescription of the Constitution, are supposed to be carried out by governors, consequences will be what we have just said. I'm therefore afraid that even the big four, the issue of housing, the issue of health under the big four, these are fully devolved functions. So unless the national government is going to allow the money of those big four to be implemented alongside the prescription of the Constitution, i.e. to be driven by the governors, the consequences will be like what we have seen now. I just would like to appeal to my colleagues who are complaining about my insisting that Parliament can do better, to remember that when we were in Parliament, Jacoyo Mediwo and I, we played our role, and Kenyans saw, i.e. the scandals that were there at that time, Amolo, included Anglo-leasing, misappropriation of free primary education, the story of Grand Regency Hotel, and the tail end of Golden Bag. We articulated and prosecuted those scandals effectively, and Kenyans know this. What we are asking is that members of parliament, the latter day scandals, SGR, NYS, the scandal at the Ministry of Health, Galana Kulalu that is there now, what is it that you guys are doing? Even if nobody's going to go to jail, at least Kenyans will know who amongst us cannot be trusted with positions of leadership. You are doing nothing. I'm not saying you're useless, but I'm saying that probably you're scared of holding the bull by its horns. And because we pay you and pay you very handsomely, we will continue demanding that you perform. Lastly, Otienda Malo, when you say Khalwale is more in government than you, please be reminded, Mimi ni raia. I'm not a village elder. I'm not an assistant chief, I'm nothing. Mimi ni raia huko Marinya. That's all.
It's called Otiende Amolo, not Otiende Wamalo.
I am very sorry.
All right.
I withdraw Wamalo. I said Amolo.
All right, we have also the rush of tweets coming through. We have Kiprono Abraham Arab Kogo saying, what is happening in Kenya is happening because our opposition died even before 2013 elections. There is urgent need to have a viable and objective opposition. We have also Abdallah Mdambo saying, what percentage has Galana Gulalu irrigation project contributed to the food basket since its inception? Economist Joe, government of Kenya is quick to invest in some white elephant projects instead of facilitating farmers to increase their produce using a fraction of the amount used in such grandiose ventures. That explains why we import even what we can produce. Also, we have Kennedy Omogi saying, who signs those contracts? Foreigners? He's asking. Or Kenyan businessmen disguised as civil servants? Right? Also, we have concerned Kenyan, Jubilee made a sober decision way back to sink Kenyans further into deep dark hole, be it Lapso, Galana Kulalu, dams, SGR, the list is endless, and now you hear zombies clutching onto the handshakes as though it's the cause of our problems. We are woke, he says. We have also Nicodemus Mwania saying, I knew things went out of way when the leadership kept mum about the much publicized Galana Kulalu project. Also, we have Kigotho Martins. In all these matters, corruption, the buck stops with the Jubilee leadership, the president and his deputy, fairly and squarely. Also, we have Kamau Gishimu saying, shame, shame, shame. A time is coming where God will punish all these government officials for swindling Kenyans. It's so unfair that there are no jobs, food, water, roads, taxes are high, small-scale businesses are suffering while government officials are swindling us sweat. Also, we have the Hook saying Jubilee is the biggest scandal since independence, biggest disaster since the Titanic. It's sinking and taken all of us down with it. And to think even Bonnie Mtetezi is seamlessly campaigning for Ruto, Jubilee, again, never. This is Hook who is saying this. Philip Mbithi Kiswi, Galana Kulalu was the biggest conduit for corruption. How does a country pump billions to farm a desert when farmers in our high-density agricultural areas are getting a raw deal from the same government? And also we do have Geoffrey Mutai saying, that was a project for the high and mighty to fleece Kenyans. It's so absurd. Also, we want just to take a keen look on what is on the front page of the Business Daily. He raises some of the issues, some of the comments here. How Lugari MP, that is, what is the splash here? And 1 billion shillings from state funds. And if you may read that, he says that Lugari MP Ayub Savula earned a total of 1 billion shillings from contracts signed while various state agencies in 5 years through his company, Sunday Publishing Limited. The Kenya Revenue Authority has revealed in court filings. Mr. Savula's Sunday publishers is said to have received the cash between 2013 and 2017 from government agencies, among them the National Hospital Insurance Fund, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, the Nairobi County Government, Migori County, Mombasa County, and the National Lands Commission. The lucrative deals are now the subject of an ongoing tax evasion investigation by KRA and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. You want to comment on this? If you may hack back into also where Savula is coming from. A Balab to Kashmir story, or rags to riches story as well. Way back in Mumias? Boni Khalwale?
I would have loved that I don't say much.
Much that you know or you do not know?
About Savula, and I'll deliberately avoid commenting on the current problem. But if it is true...
But you know his genesis right from Mumias as well, isn't it?
Yes, I do.
You do know?
If it is true, because sometimes what we read in the papers, you cannot be too sure that it is what is actually taking place.
So what are you doing? You're casting aspersions on what we have on the front page of the business daily?
We can easily end up being sued for saying things we are not sure. I have no facts at the moment that he evaded paying this kind of money and that he received that money. Since there is a court process that is ongoing, we hope that facts will keep on coming out. However, I would like to ask the DPP and the DCI to also ensure that his companies are also investigated so that they consolidate the stealing that Savula carried out on Mumias Sugar Company together with the Kidero. We would like them to be consolidated so that as Kidero gets tried for misappropriation of the funds in the county government of Nairobi, we also consolidated with the ones he did in Mumias. And as Savula gets continues being pursued for what he has done at the Ministry of Information, again, they should consolidate it with the money they stole from Mumias. That is, I'm just asking for the farmers. We would be very happy. They should not leave the cases in isolation. Okay. Others, as far as this is concerned, I'll wait to see how it pans out. The court process comes out.
You know, Debarl, the biggest question on my mind, reading all this about Savula, the Galana Kulalu, and the dam story that is on our newspapers today, the thing that bothers me is, are we winning the war on corruption? Let me first of all put out a disclaimer. For the things that I own, I can explain where I got them from. Therefore, I have absolutely no business defending anyone that is corrupt because I have never stolen and I don't intend to. I'm a properly brought up African child.
We don't expect a 23-year-old to own much. You wait when you reach our age.
It's too early. You know that's a problem with these old men. after they have looted Kenya, they want to discourage us young people. The point that I wanted to make, Debarl, is this. You know, this war on corruption, unfortunately, the way it's being driven, every time somebody raises critical issues about it, we are quickly branded and labeled as being opposed to the war on corruption. You remember, because today in your newspapers you're reporting that DCI has summoned directors of 107 companies. I remember very well during the much hyped corruption conference. One of the things that CJ Maraga told DPP and DCI, that if you lump up together 40 to 50 people and you present them before a court of law, surely, how do you expect to get a conviction? Absolutely. My advice to DCI, DPP, please reduce on the drama and the hype. There's just too much smoke and very little fire in the work that you're doing. To be sincere, I wish you success. It will be my greatest honor to see the people that are looting Kenya be brought to book. Unfortunately, the way they are going about their work, it appears as if it is all synchronized to try and create a drama of some sort, but not have a final. Most of their cases are just being tried on the newspapers. But when it gets before a court of law, it doesn't hold water. Surely, you cannot convince me, Debarl, unless I am seriously insane, that out of all these 107 companies, all of them either were used to swindle money. I mean, there has to be 2, 3, or 5 that perhaps he's looking for. And what is all this about trying to say, you know, I need all the 107 directors standing out, even in terms of just the neatness of the work that he's doing. When you have 107 companies, what is your concentration span? The work of an investigator like DCI is first of all to do the background work. Until now you have zeroed in on the people that you think are persons of interest, then now you say these are the people that I'm calling for. But when you tell me that you went, found a list of all, perhaps these 107 are the companies that were paid to supply various things. I've seen even companies that supplied air tickets, you know, and all that kind of thing, and say come to DCI, you're missing it. Otiende, because you participated in the drafting of our constitution, perhaps you will help this panel and the country at large in telling us what was your intention on the nexus between DPP, DCI, and EACC. Because as it is currently, everybody is closing over everything. You see DCI on this one, you see DPP on another one. If it is clear to me as it's supposed, all initiations of all these cases
So you think
should be at EACC. If you run into problems where people are not complying, then you hand it over to DCI.
Right. So you think
and DPP finally should be able now to say that I have received the file, the investigations have been completed. Either you charge or you return and say certain things are not clear, as used to happen.
Right.
By the way, when what is this guy called, the environmental minister, Tobiko was DPP, a lot of us used to throw flack at him and say, oh, he's returning he's returning files back to EACC. But when you see the kind of hype that is being generated with very minimal or near zero conviction happening, you see the wisdom in some of the things that he was doing. And the last thing that I'd wish, perhaps, if we were to properly win this war on corruption, is that there shouldn't be any sacred cows, as it appears to me. There are certain things that are way too glaring, which unfortunately we don't see either DPP, DCI heading that direction.
So you think it's all style and no substance with this fight on corruption? Yeah, but we have Jaco. You wanted to comment on that particular splash on Savula?
Sure. First of all, Debarl, I am happy that Bonnie today, on the issue of sugar, Mumias is on the side of the people. I'm so happy.
He has
going to it. No, because just the other day here he was glorifying Raya as employing lawyers by importing sugar.
He does.
How does a farmer, somebody...
3,500.
Let me just tell you, your people are poor because of this corruption. And Debarl, the question we need to address ourselves to, or the suggestion we need to address ourselves to, is where do we go from here to win the war on corruption? I want to appreciate my young brother, Senator Cheriot, for saying, are we winning the war? I think we are. But I think the authorities need to do more. By, first of all, begin from the top. And from the top means dealing with Parliament, dealing with EACC, the investigative authorities cannot be corrupt in themselves, and we succeed. So why is the DPP telling us he has files on governors? And we know the amount of theft that is going on in the counties. We know, we were here when it was being flashed all over, MPs taking 10,000 shillings to allow sugar with mercury into the country. Nobody has been prosecuted, nobody has been arrested. So MPs are the people in public service. You can't keep saying, because Bonnie Halwale was there, Midiwo was there, two wrongs never make a right. But we did our part. We did our part. Wamatangi was here with us those days, and they protected this thing called laptops, 3.5 billion laptops from class 1 kids. And we said here that it is a scam. Which school in this country has the laptops? Bonnie and I, we said it. And we said, don't do it. It is a misinvestment, because that money, you can be traced to somebody's pocket. So, Senator Cheriot, even if there were 1,000 people, let the authorities work. Bring them in. The DCI and the DPP need to deal with the court, the justice system, because there's corruption in our courts. Deal with them. A lot of these cases are taken to court. You cannot achieve convictions. Lastly, Debarl, I want to plead with people in the August House that it is not just good enough to come here and lament when you can get an idea from here and take it there. What we need to do, number one, is to do regulations, like this tendering process. Kalana, whatever Gulalu, like, hello, the Luya word is so difficult to pronounce. But the whole point is, these things we are saying that these companies which come to tender, these shadowy companies, we need to keep improving our laws. We need to, now that it is being proven that there's an Italian guy without an office in Kenya, has come and walked away with billions. Nobody, I saw Honorable Tiende saying that they even tried to serve their lawyers, and they said, we are not their lawyers. You know, in all this, besides making these tendering laws, we need to criminalize the civil servants that sit in these meetings. If you jail one or two, none of them will sit, none of them will be used by politicians, because politicians don't sit in those offices. The politicians use civil servants in those offices. So I think we are making progress. In fact, Debarl, if Boni, Aluale, and myself did not participate so actively in bringing a new constitution, we would not be seeing all these things. At least now they are coming out. They're coming out. Many more are going to come out. All we need to see is positive results. We want to see that, you know, just the other day, I saw the hatchet man of the Matangi side, Honorable Murade, saying that the most expensive dam.
I think there's something you're missing about me. You've mentioned me so
I've
many
missed
times.
you. I've missed you. But he was saying something very interesting.
Thank you.
That somebody is building the most expensive dam ever built in the world in Kitui. And that dam, after the tendering, the company that bid the highest was loaded upwards again, another 3 billion shillings. You know, and that person, he was accusing, Murade has not been summoned to say anything different, but he was talking about generally, very blatantly, about the Ministry of Water and Cheriot's people.
All right, thank you.
Can we wind up with this? We now go to on the Savula issue. We never had
Savula. Okay.
So can we have a very quick one, because I'm a businessman. I didn't want to say much on it, but just very quickly, a few things.
What do you mean you're a businessman?
I mean, because I know the law around business.
So
you know, one, you even ask yourself what this kind of headline is doing here, or what business do we have as a country or government bringing up this matter? You know, the law is very clear, Debarl, that if you award any person or any company a contract as government, and during payments, you recover what is payable to government first, and you only remit to that person what is equal to their payment. So these recoveries, and the only amounts that are normally retained for that matter is only the amount that is specific in the contract, that should be retained. And then once it's retained, then the last portion is paid to the contractor. The rest is retained by government. So what I'm saying is that most of these you're finding happening now is really a question of one, not mischief, but corruption in government offices, because they don't have to drive government to the extent of coming to arrest Jacob Midiwo. Now that he has been mentioning me, let me mention him so that I can pay him back. But I believe if the law is followed, recover the monies, knock it off as the tax payable, and then pay the balance, you don't have this kind of scenarios. Secondly, and Jacob, because you spoke about the laptops and what you said here, and the laptops project, when we spoke about it here, Debarl, for purposes of the record being straight, as we spoke about when it was a pilot project, it was piloted in some schools, it has come to now what has been announced, that it is not going to be implemented, but government is going to build those laboratories that came out in the news. And so in as far as what was being done, and that's what I started by saying, Debarl, that there is nothing wrong
for any leadership or any government to look and find solutions as to how you mitigate, including IT literacy in our schools. It's an issue that we must deal with. But the question is, once you have decided that it's going to be done, those you put behind it, do they do the right thing, don't they? If they don't, then hold them to account.
Thank you.
It's that simple.
But what about Otieno Amolo on this, having a legislator and a conflict of interest as well? You as an MP also, you know, dealing with the government, doing business with the government. Isn't this also part of the public ethics that is enshrined in the Constitution that we should desist from?
Yeah, let me answer you, but let me start from where Jacoyo left. And I think that, and I agree, that we need to do a lot in Parliament, even in the National Assembly. And I agree that Jacoyo and Boni, in your time, you did quite a bit, except that time you were Boni Mtetezi. Now, I do not want to say where you have moved to. I will leave that for another day. Except, let's just say the new Boni, now they say things which he doesn't even keep. You remember the other week he promised us to bring a clip, he never did. Last week he promised a letter, he never did. But I will leave that. On this...
Is Boni Msakanyaji.
On this headline, and I agree with Matangi. The headline is a bit curious because it raises two things. First is the question of Ayub Savula's company doing business, and I'll respond to that.
Yes.
But then the second question is the non-payment of tax. Now, I do not understand where DCI is coming in here.
Yeah.
Because if it is non-payment of tax, it's a matter of KRA. And as Senator Matangi says, if tax was not paid for those many years, then how was payment made? How was procurement made? Because in procurement, you also need tax compliance. Now, the second issue is a question of doing business. The lapse here is that after the new constitution was enacted and there was an attempt to bring an anti-corruption act that was very fundamental, Parliament then watered it down, you remember. And one of the things that had been in the initial draft was the idea that if you are a state officer, then not only can you not hold any other engagement, you cannot even be in business that does business with government. As we speak, and once that was watered down, there is nothing in the law that stops any member of parliament or any state officer being part of a business that still does business with government or anybody else. So, in this context, the fault would not be that Ayub Savula did business with government. The question would be if there were improprieties in the course of doing that business. And let's just say that the money is being spoken about appears humongous. But I am happy that the report says the matters are in court. They're being actively prosecuted.
And if KRA is sleeping on the job, you want to tell me also DCI is not supposed to actually intervene?
Well, no. The point is very specific. Everybody has a jurisdiction. Yes. And if they are not doing their work, then they must be removed. Yes. You cannot go and assume somebody else's jurisdiction. That is usurpation, which cannot be allowed. DCI cannot start collecting taxes. And just the way DPP cannot start doing the work of the AG, and the AG cannot start doing the work of the judges, and vice versa. But let me finish what I was saying. And there's something that Senator Chiriot said, which I think is right. Nowadays, and even today I've looked at the papers, and if you just count by number, the number of cases reported to be under investigation, they are over 15. All with all sorts of interesting details. In almost all of them, there is none that is under prosecution for the ones that have been reported today. And for me, that raises a very fundamental issue. Is it that the journalists have now come up and they are able to track these things, and even before the investigations are complete, they're able to give us all this? Or is it that there's an active role of somebody giving preliminary investigations reports to the journalists to keep feeding and raising our hopes, which sometimes does not result in conviction and then crushes our hope? I think that the DCI, the DPP, and even the new CEO of EACC their mind is in the right place. Their intention is right. I am not sure their execution is as it ought to be. The intention to fight corruption is a good thing, is what we would call, it's just at the mind level, that your mind is now right, and I think that is right. But in law, there's a difference between what we call mens rea, that is the intention, and actus reus, that is how you execute it. Mens rea can be at an artistic level, but the actus reus must be scientific. I have said before, and I repeat, that we must not have a DPP who's media savvy but court shy.
Yeah.
Because convictions are done in court. I like the mind and intention of DPP Haji, but that intention cannot be prosecuted in the media all the time and never in court. That when it comes to court, we have to hire another foreigner to come and prosecute. We must, you cannot, and let me close with this, you can be the best footballer, dribbling on the sidelines, juggling, but you cannot succeed as a good footballer if you will not enter the pitch to play. And that is, I think, where the missing link is.
Well, could you wind up on it so that we can look at KQ briefly? We are actually running out of time.
Debarl, failure to pay taxes or tax evasion is a crime. The C in the DCI is crime, criminal. So the DCI must investigate Savula. Just as much as he must, that C is the description of his job. That is his, is lane to run on. You cannot say it is scary. This is a crime, tax evasion. For you to get the whole amount and never pay taxes, you had a criminal mind. And that is the work of Kinoti. Number two, I watched this show, Debarl, last week. I saw some panelists, I can't say all. They keep blaming the media for doing a good job. How are you blamed when you do a good job?
Blaming the media for doing a good job?
Yeah, they're blaming them for doing a good job. The media is perfect, they're spot on. This thing is huge, this thing about corruption. I mean, if I have, even against this media house, gone to court for defamation, we don't see people going to court because Nation defamed them for being corrupt. And lastly, these are political thefts, my brother Otiende. The DPP and the DCI must talk to Kenyans. These politicians are powerful. If they don't talk, how do we know? We must carry public confidence. And that's how war against corruption is fought. I sit up at night watching CNN. I've been watching this Russia connection and American elections. They are talking. They leak it. It doesn't skew the investigation.
Thank you.
Because you are investigating powerful people.
I want to agree with Jacoyo that is unfair. It is unfair for us to attack the media. And even more unfair for us to cast aspersions on the DCI. They are doing what is expected of them. The media today, upon realizing that taxes were not being remitted, they have reported. And then they have gone even further and reminded the readers that the same payments for which taxes were not being reported, already Savula is facing charges of stealing 122 million. 122 million shillings. What mistake has the media done by bringing the two together so that a reader understands exactly what's happening? My only sympathy with Savula is this, that let Kenyans know that this is a syndicate. Savula was only taking a small percentage. The PS, who was my classmate, the PS who was my classmate had his own cut.
Which PS?
Itemere. It is here in the same story. And the rest of the 24 people who are charged with them. So these are syndicates where somebody gets a very small cut. So when you look at Savula on the paper like this, people think that he's worth 1 billion shillings. In fact, he's only worth the little cut that he got from that money.
So,
and I'm not saying this to justify that. When you still
information that would be useful to the
Yes,
DCI.
yes.
I think you should report to DCI.
No, it is here. It's here.
Okay.
It's here. It is not mine.
Let's listen. Aaron Cheruiyot, what would you say then? If we have the PSAs and the CSAs, you can look at that editorial cartoon that we have today.
You know,
and also comment on it.
I've always realized that on this issue on performance of media, DPP, DCI, Boni and Jakoyo share the same views, while very unlikely of us, Otiende and I agree on this one. And you know, Jakoyo, the point that Otiende is raising is very fundamental. His point is, well, it is criminal for sure not to pay taxes, but where is the work of the person who primarily was supposed to have collected those taxes? We are being told, for example, that these are taxes that should have been remitted in 2013, 2014, 2015. To be able to do business with government, you need a yearly tax compliance certificate. Who is it in KRA that was issuing this company that is being mentioned here with a tax compliance certificate while they were not remitting taxes as was expected of them? Therefore, what Otiende is saying is that we should not allow a scenario where we believe that DCI, for example, is a single source of truth, that their work cannot, for example, be manipulated. It is important for us to question and ask, who are the people that aided also? You know, there's a charge of aiding and abetting crime. So we need to be known, to be told, who are the accomplices of these people in KRA. KRA, on yearly basis, for the last 3 or 4 years, have been missing their yearly targets on collection. It is only now that you are beginning to see them raiding certain business premises. So we need to be told this inefficiency that is in KRA, and together with it, you know, the issue that has been in court about the director, Commissioner General, having overstayed in office. You know, you can be good, you can be great, but there was good wisdom in having a term of office limit for every public officer. I think it doesn't make sense. For another day. It doesn't make sense, just in conclusion, that you keep on missing your targets as an officer, but you're told you're a good person. My final point on this, I'd wish to further agree, lastly, but not the lastly of Wamatangi. Not the lastly of Wamatangi. I would wish this, the reason why you see Otiende and I say this is because constitutionally, Article 244, subsection 4, it speaks on the organs and what the National Police Service is supposed to do. And it clearly states that, and this is to the Inspector General, let alone the DCI, this is somebody who ranks higher, that no person may give direction to the Inspector General with respect to the following. One, which is my subject of interest, the investigation of any particular offense or offenses. Yet we have seen before us many times the DCI appear and say, you know, we are doing this because the president has said we need to fight corruption. It is not in his place to take instructions from anyone. That is why people are beginning to raise questions about how this war is being waged. They should not be taking instructions from anyone. Otherwise, we will begin to say these are political persecutions rather than self-initiated. So let them rise above these issues. We wish him success. That's why we critique him on every other day and say, you're doing good, but you can do better.
Thank you. Right. I'm just wondering, because we have a few minutes remaining, if we may just touch a bit as we're winding up on the KAA and the KQ, the KQ-KAA takeover debate that is, of course, so in the public domain right now. Yesterday we discussed exhaustively about it, but I just wanted to hear also from you as well. Do you in any way see any dark underbelly with this particular arrangement? We'll begin with you, Tenda Molo, briefly.
Yeah,
as we're winding up. So
I think this is a subject that we may need to discuss a little longer at a later date.
So we actually shelve it?
No, we can comment on it briefly because it's also topical right now. I have many questions, and I think many people have many legitimate questions. Let me pose only 3. One, Kenya Airports Authority is established by an act of parliament. It is a statutory body. Kenya Airways is a publicly listed but private body. It is a company. I do not understand conceptually how a statutory body can be taken over by a private company. Even legally, even factually, I cannot conceive of it. 2, the role of the Kenya Airports Authority is so fundamental and wide. including establishing of aerodromes, read airports, including managing all airstrips in this country, including airstrips that are small like the one in Homa Bay and Siaya, which Kenya Airways does not even know exist, including licensing of private airstrips. The functions of KAA are so fundamental and so out of league of Kenya Airways that I do not understand how they can do it. My third and last question is, when one says, as the MD of KQ was saying, that they were not the initiators of the idea, that the decision, the communication came from the PSS and it was supposed to be from higher and all that, and as you are narrating, you said probably from cabinet and all. The constitution is clear. Who is this higher authority? Is it cabinet? If it's the cabinet, the constitution under Article 153(1) is very clear. Any decision of the cabinet must be in writing. Was he given a decision in writing? Any decision by the president must be in writing. Yes. Article 135. Was there any such decision? So who is this shadowy figure or persons who made the decisions which do not comply with the constitution? And if they don't, then why were they acted on? There are many legitimate questions that need to be asked around this.
Right. Jacoy, also, this will serve as your closing statement. Otieno.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you.
Debarl, 2 Sundays ago, I was on the flight. I think it was specifically on the 17th. I was in a flight with Esther Koimet. Out of nowhere, I asked her, who is behind the scam? Then she told me about, she used many jargons. We are trying to make government efficient. I said, but you are changing the structure of government. And I told her, who owns the planes, the assets? Where are the assets of KQ? That you want to give it the power over assets that belong to Kenya, being a private company. They say, no, we can work out a way and all that. That I saw her name as one of the people behind this thing. I was actually shocked because she was talking as if somebody was doing it from somewhere. But I wasn't alone. I was with people, but I talked to her in public because my instinct told me that somebody is really, the people, the mysterious owners of the planes in Kenya Airways, because that's probably the only asset Kenya Airways has. The planes are owned by shadowy figures registered in Jersey Island. I'm told one of the criminals being sought after today by the DCI, who recorded a statement the other day, fronts for some of those planes. Now, my issue is KQ is a profit, it's a loss-making company. KQ is mismanaged. KQ has no planes. KQ is a shadowy company. The Senate investigated it last year and didn't go very far because of the shadowy figures involved. I want to appreciate Parliament for saying no to this scam because it's a very big scam.
Thank you. Aaron Chiriot.
You know, we already have a problem with KQ. I'm a member of the Senate Finance and Budget Committee. And constitutionally, every loan guarantee should be by approval of Parliament, not National Assembly. Somebody mischievously took before the National Assembly committee and got the loan guarantee that KQ got from taxpayers last financial year. It never came to Senate. And that is an active question that we recently put before the Cabinet Secretary for Finance. Actually, he had sent his CAS. Therefore, and they are before us, they're supposed to give us answers on how they managed to get taxpayers' money without the proper approval of Parliament, because it should have been done at National Assembly and Senate as well. While we are still at that, then we are hit with this news where the managing director goes before a parliamentary committee and says, it wasn't my decision after all. This is a decision that was made at cabinet level and we were only told to execute. We shouldn't allow them to get away with that, because what the members of that committee, and Otiende, you're a member of PIC, you need to ask, PSC, you need to ask that MD when he comes back later on this week to show you documentary proof of that letter that asked them to execute this mandate, because we need to know, the secretary to the cabinet needs to confirm that was it something they decided at cabinet, and if so, Why did they hide it from Parliament?
Thank you,
We
Senator.
cannot allow this to happen.
Thank you. Senator Cheruiyot, thank you.
I sat on the Special Investigative Committee chaired by Professor Peter Nyong into this matter. And therefore, let us not use this limited time to discuss such an important issue. I'll therefore use my closing remarks by telling Ambassador Amina, CS Education, to stop experimenting with the lives of our youth. They cannot raise universities' fees by 200%. It is going to result into 99% of the children of the poor, who, by the way, are the majority of the university. They'll drop out of the university.
Thank you.
The ministry should guide the universities on innovative ways of generating income.
Thank you, thank you. But you should read also a tweet by Sam Akwale who's saying 21 billion shillings will pay 3 times over the money owed to help by jobless graduates. Secondly, Mahocha, that is Boni Mtetezi, will tell you Kulalu in Luya means a big madman. How much are closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Debarl. One, I'm the chairman of Roads and Transport in Senate, and so I'll limit my comments to the extent of the information I have. First, I want to confirm that I've had a discussion with the management of Kenya Airports Authority about in our last session of Parliament on this matter, in a meeting where they raised the matter, and we had invited them in my committee to have this discussion before it was taken up by PAC and PIC in National Assembly. And I believe we'll still be able to have a go at it. Now, but of importance, the questions that KEA then raised with us at that particular time was, and I was trying to look at it in comparison to what happens when other airlines are involved, for example, with airports. If you look at some airlines like Emirates, they have a dedicated terminal in the airport in Dubai where they run. They own some duty-free shops, but that is only to the extent of their right to use that particular place. Now the questions that were being raised by KEA, especially as to the place of other airlines, whereby if it is KQ managing the airport, and the concept was they manage the airport, then how do they handle other airlines, for example, in terms of fees and so on? And so I believe this is a discussion that will be coming to my committee. I'll be listening to it keenly, and absolutely we'll be making the right comments once we have the information.
Right. We were struck for time, but let me just, my director Jackie, read 1 or 2 tweets as we're winding up. John Ogola is saying Dodd should report incompetence. How can he, can he have the intention when all he does is issue bombastic presses assuring the public that he has watertight cases, only for them to subsequently stall for lack of sufficient evidence? Let's not glorify incompetence. This is a debate about the DCI that we were talking about. Also, we have a leadership front saying it's about time that the president, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, walk the talk, stop the roadshow and act. Let the handshake be put aside and the corruption fought from all ends. Raila should do something if at all he wants a peaceful country. This is what leadership front is saying. And we'll leave you also with this editorial cartoon that has been drawn today by Gado. It's all about also the Huduma, hashtag Huduma number demystified. The card comes with a Eurobond app, which has SGR speed. It is connected to the IBC biometric servers, and it will be fitted with an IYS IFMIS microchip. And we'll leave it at that. So much grateful that you've been also driving the show with me. I really appreciate our panelists as well this morning. Thank you.